Good morning, everybody. Welcome. We're just going to give everybody a moment to make themselves comfortable in the Zoom room this morning. But you should be, I see three of us on screen. You should be able to hear me talking. So perhaps pop a note in the chat box. Tell us how windy it is with you this morning, because I think if you're in the UK, the likelihood is you're going to have serious wind. Lauren started to drive through monsoon conditions this morning and decided to turn back and head back to the Midlands. But hopefully it's not too bad with you and you're battened down. Nobody's put anything in the chat yet. Always makes me a little bit anxious, a little bit nervous that people can't see us and hear us. So somebody settle my mind for me and say hello in the chat. There we go. We're rolling. Excellent. Thank you, Lee. Let me share my screen so we are ready to kick off. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning. So welcome. This is our September App of the Month webinar. I'm sure many of you have attended these sessions before. We're seeing regular names come back, so thank you for continuing to support us. The idea of these sessions is we focus on some thought leadership for you, some insight in terms of what firms are doing. And we're really lucky this month because we are talking to Spotlight Reporting, who have recently done a global trends report. So we're going to share some of the findings from that report in terms of what are firms doing around advisory, what are the challenges that firms are facing right now. So kicking things off, we are going to do some very quick introductions. For those that don't know me, I am Will Farnell. I'm founder at Farnell Clarke, a firm based in Norfolk. We're a team of about 70 people, and I'm also co-founder and director of App Advisory Plus. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Lauren from our own team at Farnell Clarke, and also Miranda Kendall from Spotlight. So let's do some intros. Miranda, do you want to just tell people who you are?
I am. So as Will said, Miranda Kendall, I'm the Director of EMEA and North America for Spotlight Reporting. I've been in the accounting industry for probably over 15 years now, but actually in software and technology for, I daren't say, but 20 years plus. And yeah, I've been at Spotlight for the last 9 months.
And EMEA and North America is like, it's pretty
Yes.
huge, isn't it, Miranda? That's like everywhere other than Australia and Asia.
Yeah, which is interesting considering I've spent the last 25 years actually living over in APAC. But yes, and North America is new. That I'm just taken on that region in the last 2 months. So,
gentle little commute for you across the Atlantic.
Yes.
Lovely to have you here, Miranda. Thank you very much. Lauren, do you want to say who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Sanders. I'm the HR Director at Farnell Clarke. So within that, I have a dual role. So primarily looking after the full employee life cycle and talent management within Farnell Clarke, and also running our HR advisory client services to a number of clients, both in the UK and globally as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Lauren. So what are we going to cover off for you today? We've done some intros, we've done some welcomes. So we are going to focus on Spotlight's Global Advisory Trends Report, as I said a moment ago. Miranda will take us through kind of what that's about, why Spotlight do it, and then we're going to drill into some of the findings. And the findings are really around what are firms doing, where are their revenues coming from, where are the focus areas in terms of different areas of advisory work. We'll perhaps touch on kind of what that means. What is advisory? Where does it blur with compliance, and where's the distinctions between that? We're going to look at some of the priorities that firms have, particularly from a software perspective, in terms of what are they doing in their firms at the moment, where are they focusing their effort in terms of new technology. And then we're going to talk about the key challenges, and the fact that we have Lauren on the call, who is an HR specialist, might give you a bit of a clue of what some of those biggest challenges are for firms right across the globe right now. So hopefully there's going to be some really valuable insight in the session for you. Loads of time for questions. If you have questions as we go through the session, if anything that anybody says or any of the stuff we surface from the report you want to know more about, pop it in the Q&A box, because I can monitor the Q&A box. The chat sometimes drifts a little bit, so pop your questions in Q&A, and I'll either interrupt and we'll pick those up as we go through, or we'll save them and answer them for you at the end. My plan is we get you away by about 11:15, so we will get cracking. So before we start, Miranda, just in case anybody doesn't know, just tell us a little bit about Spotlight, where you come from and what you do.
Yeah, indeed. So we're a one-stop shop for everything to do with your three-way forecasting, cash flow forecasting, management reports and dashboards, from your smaller firms that want to just do some dashboards around compliance, right through to big complex multi franchises, not-for-profits we work with. But then the majority of our work is done with accounting firms that are looking to try and introduce some software and technology to support them in these areas, to free them up to go and speak to those clients in some of the things that we're actually going to talk to today in the trend report. And we are a New Zealand development business, and we've been around for the last 11 years.
You were kind of one of the first in the app ecosystem, weren't you, in
that
terms
is
of the
true.
Zero app ecosystem?
We were, absolutely. And I was there working in a different app solution that was in that ecosystem. So I've known Richard, our CEO, from the first days when they first launched, and he was very much part of the fabric and within Xero when that all took off 11 years ago now. Seems like only yesterday. Yeah,
it was drinking. By,
it certainly does. It was more like a cult back then in the way that it all took off. It was good fun times though, very good fun times.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the Global Advisory Trends Report. Just tell us what it is and why Spotlight obviously invest huge amount of time and effort into collating this report.
Yeah, so we actually did it in collaboration with Carbon, obviously a company that's very close to me and probably my second favourite solution out in the market. You will probably know why, because I came from Spotlight, came to Spotlight from there. We do this for a number of reasons. One, we want to hear what's going on, not just in the countries that we all live in, but the survey went out to 6 different countries. We got over 1,100 respondents, and out of that, there's 250 came from accounting firms. But we do that because we want accounting firms to understand that it's not a UK thing that's trending, or what is trending in other regions. So we want to bring that knowledge into a place to help people, guide them and get some insights that can help them shape what they're trying to do, and also maybe reach out and try and solve some of the problems and challenges that are having, and how can we do that, and how can technology and software support it.
Yeah, excellent. And we're going to pick out some of the key highlights from the report during this session. But what we're going to do is we're going to send a copy of the report along with the recording of the session, hopefully later on today. So you'll get a copy of that, so you can actually spend some time looking at some of the detail within the report. But let's kind of get into some of the findings then, Miranda. So one of the things you looked at here is like how much revenue do firms have currently coming from advisory work, and what's the objective? Where do people want to go? How much of their revenue do they want from advisory? But before we get into that, let's just kind of try and clear off this. What do we mean when we talk about advisory work? So I'll let you answer yours, and before you do that, I mean, for my take on this is that anything that is related to the production of a set of accounts or a tax return or whatever is compliance. So for me, it's if we're doing bookkeeping, if we're providing bookkeeping software, all of that is compliance. So anything that isn't part of the process that goes on to deliver an end product of a set of accounts or a tax return, by definition, has to be advisory. That's my take. How do you position this, Miranda?
Yeah, I can agree more with you. I think just before we talk about, we're not saying advisory is something new. Our advisory is being talked about for years. I think what is happening, and you can see from here on the shift, is that it's now not a nice to have, or maybe we should do it. It's becoming a necessity that we need to. And you're absolutely right. It's about the virtual CFOs, the coaching, The strategic outlook is about working closer with your client rather than always being in the back room ticking and task lists off through the compliance work you do. So it's I see this is that it's more that human touch and actually speaking and engaging with your clients. That's the way I see advisory.
Yes, it's ultimately a relationship, isn't it? And I was at Accountex yesterday, and I kind of talked about what for me is the way I view advisory. And I've said to people for many years, my firm or our firm will be doing advisory when every client we've got picks up the phone and asks every question they've got. And the way we get to that is by having great relationships, and when they do that, we have kind of three options. We can either answer their question on the phone then and there, or we can say, absolutely, we can help with that. We'll go away, we'll put a proposal together, and we're delighted to help you with it, or we can't help with that, but we know somebody that does. So how do we get clients seeing us as more than just the people that do the tax returns and so on? Absolutely. So in terms of, sorry, Miranda, go on.
No, you go first. You asked your question.
I was going to say, in terms of this revenue, what I think is really interesting already is I mean, I don't know the exact numbers on here, but if we say there's 36 and 24, then they're by definition about 40% of firms in this survey are generating more than 31% of their revenue from advisory services.
Correct.
Which is probably significantly more than it was last time I looked at any stats around this. So it shows there is definitely a trend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's about 65% of firms that identify themselves as progressive firms, which is that they're offering advisory services. But then there's obviously still your hybrid where they're doing advisory and still doing some compliance. But I think the survey in 2021, and my apologies, I don't know the exact number there, but the shift is huge. And I think on this, seeing what they're doing currently versus what they're going to do in the future, that this just shows that the appetite of wanting to grow this area now is, getting bigger and bigger. And I think you'll see, if we look at this again in another 2 years, this is going to look different again, and the growth is going to be huge. So I think that there's the appetite, there's the ability, and that people are just wanting to do that human touch again. And then by doing that, they're actually implementing things like, tools to be able to free them up, which means they've got that time to be able to now go and do these advisory services, and changing the models in how those models are actually, work in firms. I'm working with a lot of our partners, and they're actually creating teams that are purely focused on advisory services, and then they're building out their packages now that it's part of their core standard that management reports are included in that, or they're tipping something into their services as a surprise and a delight, and then the client comes back and says, "Oh, do you know, I really like what you've been doing there." And then they're opening them doors up to be able to say, well, actually, we can also offer this to you if you're interested. And so they start that engagement. But I think it's really important that advisory is more about understanding your client. What's your client trying to achieve? What are their goals, and what does success look like for them? And I think that's where advisory then comes into play when you do that. And I know that speaking to many accountants, you ask them why they do what they do, and it's because it's rewarding when they see that their customers are actually being successful and winning at what they're doing, whichever industry it's in, and they've had an impact from that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I work with lots of accounting firms, and the one common denominator is that in every firm I go in, everyone genuinely cares about the clients that we serve. And obviously I've just written a book called The Human Firm, and that focuses on so many things that you've talked about there in terms of how do we really get to understand what it is our clients are trying to achieve to enable us to almost, I kind of challenge in the book that I think we have an obligation as accountants, bookkeepers, whatever we are, to help clients understand the things they need that they don't know they need. So we're very guilty of selling what we think clients want to buy. And I've been guilty of that in the past. You get a client and you kind of price them for accounts and VAT returns and tax returns and a bit of software and payroll. without actually questioning, like, what is it you want to achieve? And if you want to do that, then you also need these things, and this is what will help you do. This is why you need it.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be bolder in terms of those conversations. And it isn't about necessarily looking at what else can we sell to a client. Let's try and sell them some management reports or sell them some software advisory. It's like, how can we add greater value to what we do for clients? And the byproduct of adding that greater value is that we generate more revenue. But that's got to be the focus, hasn't it? Rather than saying, let's try and flog people management reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've said there, the money, the revenue you make is a byproduct. It's the client comes first. And the other thing I'm seeing is that before, I used to speak with practice firms and they was like, oh, we've grown our client base and want more clients. Now they're going, actually, no, we're looking for the right client that we want to work with, that works with, our culture, our values of what we want to be seen as a practice too. So I think there's that shift happening. I'm not sure if you see the same, Will, but that's certainly a conversation that's coming up on a regular basis now.
Much more. And again, a session at Accountex yesterday, we were one of the panelists that was on a panel I was facilitating was talking about the fact that their growth is coming from more services because their clients are growing. So whilst they're growing their team, they're not necessarily growing their client numbers because they're focusing on the value that they're delivering, the services that they're delivering. And what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to touch on kind of what are some of the specific services that firms are focusing their efforts on to grow this revenue, to make this shift from whether it's currently being at 10 to 30 to moving that to 31 to 50% of their revenue. So we'll come back to that in a moment. But what we're going to look at now is some of the information around software and where are firms focusing in terms of the technology that they're looking at implementing or revisiting in 2023. And given your current role and your previous role, you must have been quite delighted to see kind of I don't know the top 5 of these, I think, Miranda.
I know. It does make me smile, and I promise you, it wasn't rigged because we did it in collaboration with Carbon. It was genuine information that we received back. But the way I see it, if you take the top 3, like automation, fits into the top 2, practice management and reporting, and I think that practice management, getting that into your firms initially is key in being able to relieve yourself to then focusing and doing the reporting and forecasting isn't actually the revisory bit that we offer. What we do is by giving that and enabling that automation frees people up to take that and talk to their clients. So I think the practice management and reporting are both enabling firms to be able to be more proactive and grow their advisory services. And I think the key thing, I bark on about this just because I've been in technology and I've seen so many train crashes. I think the key in here is he's not just going out and going, I need this, but you've got to know why you need it and what are you trying to achieve from that solution that you're going to implement. And I think there's that stage before that people still are missing is the change management, putting your plan together. What does a tech stack look like? Why do we need to do it? What's the impact? What change needs to happen? Even, how do we restructure teams? Do we need more resource? I think one of the common hires I've seen coming in is people that are not accountants, but they come from operational sides that understand technology, so sort of take the pain away of the implementation and onboarding part. And then when you've done that, the key for software and technology is making sure that you have champions and that they're training and investment up front to get it up and ready. Otherwise adoption doesn't happen. And that's when you get people going, your software doesn't do what it says. That's because you don't know how to use it. So it's not going away. It's only going to get more and more technology, right? But it's about choosing it wisely and making sure you've got an onboarding plan in place and people are trained and they understand why they're using it and what they can achieve from it.
Yeah, and I think certainly I'm seeing again with firms that I talk to, practice management continues to be a pain point. And challenge, of course, with practice management is every firm wants to run differently. So it's like every firm wants to do things slightly differently. So I think that the practice management vendors have got probably the hardest job in the world. It's like, how do we build a product that does all the things it needs to, but has the versatility to meet differing demands from different types of firms. But I think the shift in terms of recognizing that we're going to continue to see pressure on core compliance, particularly from a pricing point of view. We've got to start getting closer to clients. We've got to better understand what our clients are trying to do, requires us to have technology in place that's going to let us capture that information, communicate more effectively, and all of this. And nothing here surprises me. Client engagement being at the top there as well. This is about how do we make onboarding more efficient? How do we get pricing right? All of that stuff. And I'm really pleased to see it, because what it says to me is that we're seeing accountancy firms gradually make that shift towards thinking more like businesses rather than kind of accounting practices and partnerships, by taking a more commercial outlook in terms of what they're doing and how they're running their firms.
I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And it delights me to see that this is, more and more of what people are trying to achieve and implement. And I think that that's not going to change in the near future either, even after 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the specific services now. So what are the things that the report said? You asked the question, how much do you want to grow your revenue by? And the follow-up question to that was kind of, what are you going to do? So what are the areas that you're going to focus on? Everybody can see the screen, so I'm not going to read through these. Some of them you're probably doing already. They're the obvious ones here. Miranda and I were talking before we went live. What I'm saying to firms at the moment is, for me, there's three big, huge opportunities for accounting firms beyond the obvious stuff, I think, which is some of the things that are here in terms of virtual CFO, planning, coaching, forecasting, and so on. For me, it's software implementation. So we've got there with tech stack assistance, so identifying what the right technology is for your clients, helping them implement it, and deciding where on that spectrum you want to be, because you don't have to do it all. You can help with the kind of the evaluation, get somebody else in to do the implementation. So I think that's a really big area. ESG is just going to creep up and grab us and say, you got to do something on this. And the third one, which is kind of perhaps consumed into some of this for me, is data science and data analytics. I think we have massive opportunities with the data that's available to us to be able to do really smart stuff for clients. But anything surprise you in terms of the results here, Miranda, in terms of what came up?
Not really, not at all. I think it's just 42% of firms are looking to grow their revenue in advisory, and I think that the top three or top four all play into advisory services, and the ones that you touched upon that are not actually core offerings yet, but people are starting to look at, especially around the ESG. I think the ESG is an interesting one. It's like, do you jump on, go all hands on to that, or do we wait? There's no standard rule around that globally, and I think there's changes still going to be happening before that really settles in, but definitely one that we should be looking out for. And wealth management, I think, will be something that creeps up again too.
Yeah, I think if we take a look through that list, there's very few things there that most firms that are watching this either now or watching the recording back would say, oh, we couldn't do that. I mean, yes, there's a few specialist bits there, but largely all of that is within the skill set of accountants and bookkeepers. So the challenge is, how do we make sure that our clients are aware that we can do this stuff for them? And that comes back again to, how do we have great relationships? How do we understand what it is our clients are striving to do? And not being afraid to talk to clients about this. We've certainly had it in my early years, and I'm sure others that are there will have had clients that have said to them, "Oh, I'm moving to a bigger firm because they can do monthly management accounts for us." And it's like, well, hang on a second, we can do. Oh yeah, we didn't tell you we can do monthly management accounts, did we? So we've got to be looking at how do we communicate this stuff? How do we make sure that our clients understand what our capabilities are? And and it's
definitely.
not about saying, oh, we can do management accounts. It's about having that conversation and the client saying, oh, I really want to do this. I want to send my kids to private school. I need to earn another £10,000 a year.
Yeah,
Well, let's have a
yeah,
look at what you
yeah.
need to do that.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I agree. And that comes back again, doesn't it, though, Will, to understanding your client, understanding what are their needs, what do they want, what are they trying to achieve, and is it that they want to be 3 days on the golf course and 2 days working,
yeah,
or are they looking to buy a new warehouse and grow the business? So it really is about understanding that client again, and
yes,
it comes back exactly what about your book again. It's the human touch. Let's talk to people again, so rather than being behind their screens tapping away on forms.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
it's important, and I think that now barriers are being removed to be able to do that. The spreadsheets. I think a spreadsheet will always exist because there will be someone that wants to do a spreadsheet, but eventually, they're slowly getting less and less now. The spreadsheets are the main driver for any kind of data,
yeah,
and which means that they're not spending even 4 hours to 4 days trying to prepare some kind of financials. Also, bringing in non-financials is key now. So being able
yeah,
to talk about a business holistically, what's the elements that drive the business, that the outcome of these financial results. And again, that's where this virtual CFO comes into play. It's about walking beside these people and being part of them, understand the family, what do they want to do, the business, etc.
yeah.
So nothing, no surprises. I just think that this is just going to get more and more, and then a few others that we need to keep an eye out that are going to all of a sudden creep up on us and
Yeah.
probably get into that top 6 eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's turn our attention to challenges. We've talked about the opportunities, but what are the
Yes.
challenges out there? So there are probably not too many big surprises here, and the fact that Lauren's just turned on her video kind of gives you a clue of where we're going here. So you can see hiring staff, economic impacts, work-life balance, client engagement, pricing, retaining staff, company culture, flexible working, mental health, diversity. So 50% of these top challenges are people related.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk a bit about people naturally. Economic impacts. I mean, just in terms of my take on this, I think that we saw during COVID lockdown huge demands on accountants, I'm sure around the world, in terms of supporting clients through what was a really difficult time. We are still in the middle of a cost of living crisis, hyperinflation, and all of these other things. Interest rates have continually gone up. Our clients are still going to be under huge pressure. And I think it's almost worse because during COVID, we had CBILS loans, we had bounce back loans, we had furlough, all the support was there. Yet the challenges we're facing now are huge, and that support isn't there. So our requirement on us from our clients is going to continue to be huge. And we need to help them understand what happens and what the future looks like, and that plays very much into cash flow forecasting, reporting, understanding where you are, making sure you're collecting cash as quickly as you can. So huge opportunity for us to really step up and support clients there. But taking that aside, everything else is people focused. So
it is indeed.
What's your take on that, Miranda, before we get Lauren involved here?
No, yeah, and it isn't. I'm not surprised at all. I think 2 years ago I was at a round table of about 20 firms, and their number one thing that was about hiring then, and it's not changed. I think hiring staff remains the number one challenge and it probably is going to be for the next 12 months quite easily. Good talent's always been in short supply. You know, as you touched upon, you know, lockdown, you know, closed borders, these all compounded the issue of hiring talent. And I know one of the things that came up before was, especially during coming out of lockdown and with all the remote working, that people were, you know, trying to hire someone maybe, you know, sort of north, but were demanding London wages because they could now. And you know, so there was so many, I think, things that came in that hindered being able to hire and retain staff, because the employee that you was looking at potentially almost had a lot more control and was able to do a lot more negotiations and what their expectations were from a firm. I think that key challenges, resourcing. It's about making sure you're training staff. You know, what does our onboarding look like to enable our staff? Do we look at, you know, offshoring, and how do we do the model for offshoring? And, you know, I've got a few points can talk to you about that later. But I think there's a, you know, the other bit about finding good talent also comes from some senior people who don't want to go into firms. They actually want to, you know, do their own thing. They want to be in control of steering their own ship, whether that's to give them more time and freedom, you know, or that their money that they're making is going back into their own business. And so we're seeing more of that. We're seeing mergers happening, which means that, you know, people going, actually, that model over there works really with what we've got set up. So this mergers come in, is either for staff or for the structure of the clients and that they've got. So I think there's loads of different reasons why these challenges are still number one for us in hiring.
Yeah, and it's interesting here that we've got, because we've got hiring at 36% as the biggest challenge, work-life balance at 33, and it's interesting that we've got both of those, isn't it? Because from an employer's point of view, we've got a problem hiring people, and then the people that we are hiring are really focused on work-life balance, so we've got to deal with that as well in terms of flexibility and work from home and remote working and flexible working, and
Yeah.
it's just a really tough challenge, and I mean, given the timing, I mean, this could be a whole session on its own, of course, in terms of, like, why have we got the challenges, where did we go wrong, why have we not got a talent pool that's big enough now? Is it because people started to offshore and outsource, or was it the credit crunch of 2007 where all the big firms stopped taking on graduates? We are where we are, though, aren't we? And it's like, what do we do in terms of step one, kind of keep the people that we've got, so retention, because if we can retain, then the demand on hiring goes down, and if we're recruiting, what do we do to set ourselves apart? And before I bring Lauren in, one of the things I talk about regularly is that we, as accountants, we spend a huge amount of time and effort thinking about our ideal client. We think about our marketing message to win clients, yet we don't give the same effort and emphasis, or many firms don't give the same effort and emphasis to finding talent, because it's the same job, isn't it? We've still got to market us as great employers. We've got to understand the type of people that we want, so we can target our messaging towards those people. So Lauren, you manage our HR function at Farnell Clarke. We're a team of 70 people, so you've got your hands a little bit full. But do you want to talk a bit about some of the stuff that we've done and we're doing to deal with these challenges?
Yeah, sure. So we're 75 staff now, Will.
75 keeps changing.
Wow.
Yeah. So about 85% of them are full time. The rest are a mixture. So I was looking at some of the figures this morning, just thinking about the discussions that were likely to come up today. So across our 75, over 20 of them are new starters within the last 12 months, which really demonstrates, in terms of the percentages, how much of a pressure there is to hire not only staff but the right staff, and across all different levels in the company. have implemented a number of things over the last 12 months. So last July, we made the decision to invest in an external benchmarking tool. So for those of you that haven't heard of it, Great Place to Work. So it's a really comprehensive, globally run staff survey, which gives you reams of information, both in terms of where you're doing really well and where to build on as an employer, what your staff really appreciate, and what you can put in place to retain them. Because I think really retention and growing your staff within is really key to solving the hiring of staff problem. It's very much an employees market at the moment. I was talking to a recruiter yesterday. The forecast, Miranda, you picked up on this isn't something that's going to change. I think the term, ironically, with the weather today, that she used was people are battening down the hatches, which I'm assuming wasn't to do with the wind, but it was actually, economically, people are affected, or are likely to be affected over the winter. There's the worry of increasing electricity costs, etc.
Yeah.
People aren't looking necessarily to move employers, so you've got to really position yourself in terms of attracting. So just going back to the Great Place to Work survey, so figure wise, in terms of the return on investment that you get from it, on average you get a 40% increase in the number of applicants per role. That's an average with anybody who completes and gets the certification. We have noticed that increase in terms of applications and the quality of applications as well over the last 12 months since we did achieve certification the first time. And it's something that we're really building into that attraction strategy. It also highlights areas where, for us, we've got some hotspots where we need to look at in order to ironically, one of them is around work-life balance for our staff. And I'm really achieving that through some wellbeing initiatives, etc. Hybrid working is a really key area that we've focused on over the last 12 months. There's that real balance, and I think, Will, you touched on it, sort of culturally, that mix between people being able to work from home, being able to work flexibly, but also, and what we've found through running the survey this year, is really placing value on that sense of being part of the bigger picture, the bigger team, wanting to understand actually everything that we've talked about in terms of the management reporting on an internal level. People want to know and have a say in what direction the company goes in. People have a view. We've looked at, and we do, and again, it's been touched on, but outsourcing in areas that are difficult to recruit. So Miranda, you touched on, particularly with more senior or more experienced people in the industry, more and more people are looking at wanting to have that control and that work in the world of self-employment. I think the word boutique was
yes.
yeah.
I'm sure it's a better word to use than boutique, but yeah.
I quite like that. But then there's an attraction strategy with these people as well, where there's opportunities to collaborate and work together and outsource that works with the industry rather than trying to force something against it. And I think the other side of it is thinking about the talent coming through. So as a company, from the outset, and we continue to do this, and we pride ourselves in it, our junior members of the team are exposed to clients very quickly. If we think, and it's come out in the metrics in this report, clients want that engagement, and it's a real skill set that isn't necessarily developed throughout the formal training route. So if we give that exposure and that shadowing experience, we're developing those skills that we need at an early stage in people's careers, giving them the skills for their own individual careers. But again, it's another retention tool that all comes back to the client.
Yeah. And Miranda, what are you seeing in terms of the firms that you're working with? What are they doing that's working? How are they tackling the challenges of recruitment and retention?
Yeah, I think the hiring or the shift into offshore for compliance work is happening to free them up to get back into that advisory stuff. So they're setting up those offshore models, and I think there's some things that you need to look at and rules around that. And then the people they're bringing on board is, I always say, I think you should be looking at, graduates again, those early 20s to 30s, but don't get them in. And I think, Lauren, you touched upon this, getting them just to work the spreadsheets and tick the boxes, get them in front of the clients very early on, because there's a bucket of people in firms that struggle to go and speak to their client because they've not done it before, because they've not had to. And so we're trying to re-educate those people and nurture and foster them and bring them to the forefront. I think if you're bringing this fresh people that have not got that barrier to speak to people, but getting them in front of clients straight away, I think that's a key as well. How they onboard, how do they enable their employees is becoming very, very important. Invest time up front. The more you invest, the more they're going to stay with you. I always look at 4 areas in any kind of hiring for a firm. Is there's got to be trust, there's got to be communication, and communication is always a two-way thing. And they've got to be empowered. Any employee should be empowered, so they feel that they're part of that business. And you're definitely seeing them changes of, whereas it would be a leader that would be only involved in a project and, then making decisions, that actually you're now creating guilds where you're pulling people from different parts of the business at different levels to have a voice on the table to shape the way forward. And I think that's really important, because they feel valued, and attaching them to a sense of purpose. Why are they coming into work every day to do what they're doing? If it's just to, take a wage home, and then that's what you're going to get back, then, they're not going to be worried if someone knocks on the door to say, hey, we've got a job offer over here. I think if you can attach them to a purpose, and that whatever they're doing is very valued, that you're going to keep them, and they're going to want to keep giving more without you having to ask. I think that fostering your employees is one of the key things to the success of your business, because you are only as successful as the people that work with you.
Clearly, I think the purpose thing is really critical, and understanding everybody understanding what the organization's about, what the vision is, what the values are that underpin what we do, and that idea about the risk of people kind of getting that offer over the road. It's like when we think about, we do net promoter score with our clients, but we do employee net promoter score as well. Yeah. And it's that point that those 9s and 10s are never going to be swayed. So if you can get people in terms of being those true advocates for what you do, when they get that offer, it's going to be a straight, I'm really happy where I am, thank you very much. Whereas the 6, 7 and 8s are going to be, well, I'm all right where I am, but I'll always have a look. So what do we need to do to get everybody in that kind of 9 to 10 bracket, and recognizing that employees are always going to have the off day, they're always going to have a bad day, where if you ask the survey on the wrong day, you might not get the answer that you might on another day. But just having some idea around where people sit and what you need to do, and make sure you got the right people, I guess, ultimately, that are a good fit for the organization. I'm conscious of time. This was one more slide we wanted to just touch on, which is around what people are doing. Again, focusing more from, whilst there's broader stuff on here, the interesting thing here is this one around hiring employees with broad skills outside of accounting. You talked about operations as a as a key area, Miranda. I'm talking to lots of firms who are looking at bringing somebody in. We did it in Farnell Clarke a number of years ago now, where it's somebody that hasn't got client focused responsibilities, whose key role is to kind of make sure that everything operates and works smoothly. Starting to think about, with the technology we're using, do we need bookkeepers, or do we need good customer service people? I know of firms that are bringing in non-accountants to do client relationship management. So opportunities here, 35% maybe there, in terms of hiring employees with broad skills outside of accounting. But obviously the flexible working, using technology with great enthusiasm, starts to tell us about the shift and the way that firms are going, and the kind of people that they're bringing into those firms that want to use technology are likely to not take a job if technology isn't a big part of that. Is that a fair conclusion from this question, Miranda?
Yeah, absolutely. And they are like we've got to remember that the generation now, they don't know nothing but technology. Everything they do is technology driven. So they are not going to be, they don't want the antiquated firm. They want that progressive advance that shows enthusiasm to, want to improve what they do. And these people don't know how to do it. They pick it up. It's not half of them. They understand it. They make it work. Yep. They break it. And so those type of hires are just key into accounting firms today. And and they're very inquisitive, and they want to do more, and they want to, I think personally, people want to develop faster. They want to come in, they want to do what they need to do. They want to say, look, I've got to here, I've been able to do this, like, what next can you challenge me with? They want to keep being challenged. They don't want to be sat doing the same thing for 2 years. So diversity within, I think, the role that we bring people on to do, which I think helps with, that cross-pollination as well. So if people are off, someone else can always pick up, whereas before we didn't always have that. I think that's also a key play in when we're hiring now, through those broad skills and that aptitude of what people want to do.
Excellent. And Lauren, before we start to wrap up, any other comments from you? And if anybody has any questions, pop them in the Q&A box, and we'll pick those up for you. But Lauren, any other observations before we start to wrap up?
I think just the one thing from me, just picking up on Miranda's point around offshoring. So it's something that we have implemented throughout this year at Farnell Clarke, and I suppose the one thing that Miranda did pick up on was around, you've really got to go in with a plan of action with it. There are cultural differences. There are various aspects that you've got to think about, not just your initial due diligence, but as that post-implementation. It's really key. So it's an incredible route to take, but it taking it mindfully and with the due diligence that it requires.
Yeah, definitely. I do. I don't know where you've offshored, Lauren, but if you take offshoring into Asia, the cultural difference is there. Leading, having a manager that is very direct and blunt just doesn't work in that culture. They're very reserved. Yeah, and they're shy. I know for companies, they force you got to be on webcam. They don't like being on webcam, so you've got to embrace that. And I think having an async culture is key to offshore as well. A lot less meetings. Also, stop watching a clock. What's the results that they're producing, rather than expecting them to do stupid hours. That's not what we should be looking at. We should be looking at the output of what they achieve and treating them like these are humans too. They're not machines. And I think that gets missed when we do this offshoring. I can talk about it loads more, but there's some key things. Having the tools in place for communication when you're offshoring as well. Things like Slack and Google Miro for collaboration, just a few Loom videos and stuff like that is key to offshoring as well.
Yeah, Perfect. Thank you, Miranda.
I'll shut up now.
So as we wrap up, where do we go from here? What's the next steps for you all? So thinking about the opportunities, if we're talking about virtual CFO work, budgets, forecasts, make sure your team make sure your team can identify the opportunities, and they can have those conversations with clients. And if they want to deliver the work, then what training do you need to do that? Think about your tech. Think about the technology that's in place. We highlighted automation, we highlighted practice management, we highlighted reporting and forecasting tools. So look at the tech and focus on what's it going to do for you from an efficiency and effectiveness point of view, and think about these growing opportunities. So Miranda talked about wealth management, I mentioned ESG, I mentioned system implementation, which fits nicely with kind of industry specialism. So if you have a bunch of clients in hospitality or professional services, what are the tools within a tech stack that are going to help your clients run more efficient, more effective businesses? Nobody has given us any questions in the Q&A box, so I'm going to skip through as we wrap up. Spotlight are offering a 25% discount for 3 months off of their CFO level editions. If you would like to have a look at Spotlight or talk to any of the Spotlight team, there is a QR code for you there, but we will share the information in the follow-up emails and things for you that will go out, all being well, later this afternoon. We are not too much past 11:15, so I've done a reasonable job at bringing it in on time for you. Thank you very much to both Miranda and Lauren for sharing their insight. Oh, we do have a question. I'll get a question before we wrap up. So somebody said, should I feel guilty to charge a client at the UK fee and then offshore their work at a much lower cost? Well, my answer to this is no. We've got to think about what we deliver in terms of output. So regardless of where that set of accounts or that bookkeeping or that VAT return is delivered, the end result doesn't change. So you are still taking investments, you're making investments into that offshore team, whether that be in terms of the management charges, the infrastructure that you need to put in place, the training that you need to deliver. So it doesn't change the output. And we have to start focusing on the outputs that we deliver and the value that those outputs deliver to the clients that we serve. It's a bit like the analogy with time recording. If you are billing on time, you have no incentive to work smarter, because if you work smarter, in theory, you've got to charge less. So think about the output, think about what it is that you're delivering. So I hope that answers that one. And another question on outsourcing. What is the risk regarding outsourcing versus quality? Again, Miranda, if you've got views on this, feel free. But again, my take here is that it's about QA internally. It's about finding the right arrangement with the offshoring or the outsourcing provider. Just in case anybody's not familiar, the difference between outsourcing and offshoring is, with outsourcing, you are typically sending a job and the outsourcer will deliver the job for you. With offshoring, you generally have a dedicated resource that becomes part of your integral team. So that gives you the ability to be able to kind of absorb them into your team, get them working on your systems, following your processes. Whereas with outsourcing, you send the job and the outsourcing provider will have their own process to enable you to manage that. So think about the mechanisms. Yes, there will be QA that you'll need to do, but that's no different. So if you send a job to an outsourcing provider, you're going to review it when it comes back. If you get a junior in your team preparing a set of accounts, you're going to review it when they've done it. So it's just being aware. It's being committed to give it time, because it's not going to happen overnight. There will be teething problems, but it is a solution to the challenges that we face. Miranda, anything to add on that from your experience, or Lauren, anything that we've seen so far?
No, not at all. Like offshoring, like you just got to make sure they're part of your team, and you train them no differently as if they were sat next to you. And so then you don't get the issues of the quality coming in. And then the outsourcing, again, aligning yourself, work with people that you know other people have already worked with and have had great results from. And you don't bring them on, you do it by contract initially. You're making sure that they're at the standards of quality that you expect from your firm, so when whoever receives that, it looks like it's from your firm anyway. So it is all about Q&A, testing, getting it right. And not everyone's going to be the right person for you, so you might go through a couple first before you get the one that's you're going to stick with.
Yep, and Tim Charles has kindly sent a message to us as panelists, so we see that, but you guys don't. I know Tim well. Tim's been offshoring for 6 years, and he said he's very happy to share his experiences. So so search for Tim Charles on LinkedIn. Tim will very happily share experiences with anybody that is kind of looking at this but just has those hesitations and reservations. We're seeing more and more firms do it and do it successfully. So it's clearly an opportunity. For me, it's about balance. We need enough of a UK team. We need to continue to invest in the accountants of the future, but at the same time we need to kind of recognize the opportunities that offshoring provides. So thank you for those final questions right at the wire. So thanks again to Lauren and Miranda for sharing their experiences. Thank you to all of you for joining the session. I hope you found it useful, and hopefully we will see you all on our Apple a Month webinar next month in October. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Thanks again, Miranda and Lauren, and speak to everybody soon. Thanks so much.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
See you.
Bye.